shining light on the issues that matter to you in Philadelphia. Presented by the Gift of Life Donor Program. Organ donors save lives.
I'm Raquel Williams, and this week on Flashpoint, you may have heard of them, or perhaps you've seen them. Philly's own urban concrete cowboys and girls. We catch up with the Philadelphia Urban Riders Association.
PURA is something that's ours, that we can continue to provide these experiences for our community.
Our newsmaker of the week runs the area's only black-owned BMW auto shop and dealership, and he teaches kids about car racing and luxury vehicles.
It forced them to dig deep into themselves to want to learn this subject.
Our changemaker this week started a contemporary community-based dance company that supports the hidden talents of youth and adults of color.
I wanted to provide an avenue for them to be seen on the stages.
It's a half hour not to be missed. Coming up on Flashpoint. Hello, and welcome to Flashpoint. I'm Raquel Williams. Well, you may or may not know about Philadelphia's black urban cowboys and girls. Perhaps you actually became familiar with them after the release of the movie Concrete Cowboy on Netflix earlier this year. Of course, that was starring Idris Elba. Now, that was inspired by the real riders of Philly's Fletcher Street stables. Well, he must have really enjoyed that experience because the latest on-screen effort that features black cowboys is tearing up the screens on Netflix once again. It's called The Harder They Fall. Now, this has everyone talking about Philly's riders once again. So here with us today is a member of the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy. Erin Brown is executive director of the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy. She's known as the Concrete Cowgirl, and she began her riding career, I should say, at the Fletcher Street stables back in 1990, and she has competed on the Mid-Atlantic Circuit for 20 years. We're going to find out what all of that is about. Welcome to Flashpoint, Erin.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You know, we're still not that used to seeing black men and women on horseback on the big screen. And, of course, visitors to Philly, I imagine, probably still give you a little double take when they're not familiar with you guys, when they see you riding in the neighborhoods. Tell me about the history of the Fletcher Street stables and how it all evolved into PURA.
So Fletcher Street, once upon a time, in the 30s, 40s, way before either of us were born, and before modern vehicles came into play, produce and vegetables and milk and ice was delivered from horse-drawn wagons and horseback. And that was on Fletcher Street. And directly around the corner from Fletcher Street, which would be 26th and Fletcher, there was a laundry service. And it was like a big warehouse, which also delivered your dry cleaning on, via horse and wagon. Mm-hmm. So over the time, as modern vehicles came into play, one thing that still remained was the black cowboy and a horse on Fletcher Street. But they were more so used for recreational enjoyment and for... they would give out pony rides. I keep hearing stories that, you could just, back in the day, you could just go to a place like Fletcher Street or one of the many other stables that are no longer here and rent a horse. But now in 2021, you have like insurance and all of those things that weren't a big thing back in the day. I grew up riding. I started riding on Fletcher Street in 1990. My dad has a miscellaneous metals fabrication company in North Philadelphia. A couple of the cowboys would bring their horse trailers to his company right on 19th and Girard at the time and get repairs done to their trailers because they were steel, so they needed the welding. Mm-hmm. And so my dad, which once was a day trip, supposed to be for my brother and I to go see some horses, ended up turning into every weekend, every second at the barn.
Wow.
And that's where it began for me.
So you just fell in love.
Yeah, it was like, I couldn't believe it, because at the time back then, they were like, you're driving through North Philly, and I'm from West Mount Airy, and, you see chickens crossing the street and goats and sheep, and there was a cow, and then there's horses and ponies and turkeys, and I'm like, and ducks. So it was like a farm
Right.
in the middle of North Philly.
Wow. That's awesome. I love to see it. I'm sure a lot of people love to see it. But what was it like for you as a young woman getting involved and becoming a cowgirl? I can imagine that there weren't too many cowgirls when you started.
There were not. On Fletcher Street, there was a guy named Al, who I call Uncle Al, and Tweety was the woman. I called her Aunt Tweety. So they, pretty much worked out whatever arrangement with my parents, and they kept me as like I was one of, their kids. If you're from Philly and anything involved with horses, you know exactly who Tweety is. She was like she was and is one of the flyest cowgirls. And she worked for DHS. So she would go to work with her cowboy hat on and boots. And she was the one that I've always seen growing up. It wasn't until I got a little older that I would see more. And, me with horses and going to school. And I think, I still thank you for Facebook, but I have like friends from elementary school on Facebook. And I know they will all say that one thing that has not changed about me is horses. And I was like this horse crazed kid in school, and people used to make fun of me because, I rode horses.
Right. Wow. And they're not making fun of you now, though.
No, they're not.
That's right. I can imagine that things have changed for you since Concrete Cowboy was released earlier this year on Netflix. Talk about some of the changes that took place after that movie and, some of the things that it did for the group.
It's a lot of the changes started prior to the movie even being released. A friend of mine, the late Eric Miller, I'm going to say, he was killed maybe a month before filming of the movie. So this whole script and storyline came from him.
Okay.
And he worked really closely with the filmmakers, and he was the original director of Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy.
Okay. So
PURA was, in its early beginning phases prior to filming. And then once the movie came out, it was like more so, and I took the role I stepped up after he was killed, and because I knew all about it. And, I was, I used to exercise as horses. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be the horse trainer, I guess, and riding instructor. And he, where am I going with this? Oh, so he, this was like going on. So, after he was killed, Ricky, one of the filmmakers, he asked me, he said, so what are we going to do with PURA? Like, do you want to like step up, or do you want to, we could talk about this at a later date. And I told him then, I said, if I don't, I think E would come back and haunt me, because I knew how important the movie was to him. And I knew how much and how close he held PURA to his heart, and what he wanted to continue to provide for the youth in our community, what was done for us, which is no longer being done too much in the horse world in Philadelphia. So, and that's what happens with a lot of these stables that once were for the Black Cowboys. They've never owned the properties. We've never owned them. They've been abandoned buildings. You put some stalls in there, put some horses. Hey, you have a horse stable. It's there for like 40, 50 years, and here comes redevelopment. So PURA is something that's ours, that will stay, that we can continue to provide these hands-on equine recreational experiences for our community.
Okay. And I can imagine that the movie kind of gave you some exposure that perhaps you didn't have before. I know that you guys were looking for a new, more permanent home. We can talk about some of the developments that are in the works for that. But of course, I mentioned the newer movie, I should say, that's on Netflix, also with Idris Elba, The Harder They Fall. I'm assuming you saw that one, right?
Sadly, I did not watch the movie. I have been running around like crazy. I have not watched it, but Netflix did actually reach out to me. And they set up this little town in Manhattan, New York. And it was like a town just like it was in the movie, where different vendors and people were there to sell it's all Black companies, but to sell their products. And they had myself and Michael come out, and we were one of the vendors, and we gave different demonstrations, and they got to take anyone coming to visit, they got to take a picture with the Concrete Cowgirl. So it was a great thing, and I still have not seen the movie. Okay. New York just gave me a headache, and how they commute, and
it can be a bit much. I will say that it can be a bit much, but it's great that you guys are still getting the recognition, and people are still talking about you. Because I even thought about you after I saw the movie. I said, I've got to talk to this group. I know you were on Flashpoint once before, but definitely wanted to catch up and find out what has been going on with the organization since that particular movie. Now, I know that you offer a lot of different programs, and a big part of what you do today is, educating the community. What is it like? What is it like when you try to explain to people who come to you to learn about being an equestrian and raising horses and riding? These are things that, for example, I don't know anything about. How do you go about educating the community about horse ownership and being an equestrian?
It's honestly a lifestyle. So, and you have it in you, and you may not think that it's there, but if you have this attraction to horses and that inner you, or you want to call it a bucket list that wants to ride, it's there. And horses, they're therapeutic. They were therapeutic for me my entire life. They were the voice that I didn't have, that I've developed now. And I know what it does. And I know what the power of a horse can do for a shy child, or someone with a disability, or a troubled child. And it teaches you respect and responsibility and patience, because they also have a brain of their own. So
you guys do have a program. The organization has a program called the Junior Cowboy and Cowgirls Academy, something like that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, the Junior Concrete Cowboys and Cowgirls. So we're in transition for our new home. So currently we're in Gloucester County, New Jersey, which is 20 minutes from Philly. So we'll be gearing all of these programs back up January 1st. But the Junior Concrete Cowboys and Cowgirls is when I think of myself and my peers, and, Michael and his peers, and everyone that we, that's in this community. We are who we are today because someone else gave us the opportunity. Right. And we didn't have the money. My mom was a single mom and in master's school and working. And, if it were not for Al and Tweety, and I wouldn't have had this opportunity. So they collectively, put their money together so I can compete on a professional circuit growing up. Wow. And, these kids today, they're lacking recreation. So that's what that program is for those who can't typically afford this activity, which, it's an expensive one. Right. So, and all you have to do for us is, be a child, be respectful, get good grades in school. And that's the ticket. You build another family outside of your family, and you learn horses and horsemanship and for free. Right. But you have to have a passing grade in school. And if you do not, that doesn't mean you can't come to the barn. It means you will be at the barn doing homework and tutoring while your friends are riding, which in hindsight motivates you to want to do well in school. And you want to ride with your friends. You want to compete. And that's what that program is. That's how we designed it to be, just that.
Well, you mentioned something. You said kids having a family or a home away from home. And unfortunately, some of the kids are choosing this family away from home that's not really functional and not directing them in the direction that they should be going in, and therefore getting into trouble that they shouldn't be getting in. So, your programs educate and expose kids to something different, something new, something they wouldn't have known they had a passion for had it not been for, someone introducing them to something like equestrian and horses. Do you think we need more programs like this in Philadelphia?
I definitely do. There is an amazing program. I'm sure you may have heard of it. It's called Work to Ride. They're the first Black polo team, and it's in West Philly behind City Line Avenue. But Work to Ride also does something similar, but their main thing is polo. And you work around the barn and you learn how to play polo, and you get exposed to new things. And, we have a Cornell graduate and all of that other stuff coming from Work to Ride. And I was her lead instructor for several years. So it's an amazing program. And programs like these, you need multiple because there are limited amounts of these programs, but a big city. Mm-hmm. And these few programs cannot cater to this entire city. Horses heal. This is something that we know. And honestly, I'm a testimony. And I'm sad that Michael isn't here, but he too has like a deep story that when I hear it, I still cry. So if it were not for horses, I don't know if I would be here today. My closest friends from high school, they all died from drug overdoses. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, would I be with them, like following what they were doing? But I had a horse, and I had a commitment to be at the barn and to practice for horse shows. And I did once upon a time wander off and thought I was grown and wanted to do my own thing. I still ended up back at the stable because, Uncle Al saw that I was headed up to no good. Right. And he told me there was something wrong with my horse, which it wasn't, but he knew, and he got me back to the barn. So
look at that. And I know we keep referencing Michael. Michael is also a member of PURA, and he's co-owner of Concrete Horsemanship that you co-own as well. What is Concrete Horsemanship, by the way?
Concrete Horsemanship is, me as a trainer, a coach, it's, a clinician. So many people who do have horses aren't sure how to effectively communicate with them, or you think there's this problem horse. And not everyone can understand their horse. I mean, because horses, they can't speak, but they do. It's via body language.
Okay.
So, you have to put a group of horses together and look how horses communicate horse to horse, and then transfer that same language with those different actions to horse to human. And you have to speak their language. So Concrete Horsemanship, I established that, to teach people how to establish successful partnerships with their horses through a concrete understanding of their horse. Now, so that's what that is.
I saw the horses of PURA, and they are just beautiful. Talk about horse ownership. You did say that it's expensive, but what are some of the responsibilities that go with owning and taking care of a horse?
A lot of horse owners do full care, which means they find an actual barn and they pay full board, which includes, it's kind of like college. You're paying for meals and you're paying for your stall to be cleaned and you're paying for your horse to go outside. It's like a boarding school, if you will. Mm-hmm. And us in the Black community in Philly, we've always done self-care, or what is known as rough board. So that means you're responsible for the daily feeding twice a day, stall cleaning daily, arranging farrier visits, vet visits, exercising your own horse, because instead of paying, I'm guessing full board at some of these facilities in Philadelphia are probably $600, $675. It's going up. And whereas though self-care is like $175. So, but you still have to buy your own hay, buy your own grain and bedding. You do save some money. You save a few hundred, I guess. I can't keep track. When I had one horse, I was good.
Right.
We're up to 6 that are here.
Wow.
That are counted for at the moment, but there's 4 other ones. But I've always been fond of self-care, even when I was working full time, because I always know what's wrong with my horse. Mm-hmm. I always know when something's going on. I know how much water they drank from the day before. I know how much hay they ate from the day before. I know if they're in pain. So you build a closer relationship, I think, because you're the one that's hands-on with your horse every day. So, and you learn, and that also gives you, we have conversations, and I know they all have these quirky little personalities. So that most people might not see. They might just see a horse, mm-hmm. but we got like the goofy one of the bunch who like to play all day. So, cool. Those are the two differences. But if horse ownership, if you don't have the time, full board may be for you to have someone else do it. You just go ride.
Right.
But I've always been a hands-on, I'll do it myself kind of person.
Okay. Sounds like you have to build a relationship with the horse, and they have to get to know you. You have to get to know the horse and take it from there. What's the latest on your facilities, though? I know that there was a GoFundMe effort. I don't know if you've been able to get any help from Parks and Recreation as far as facilitating and expanding your programs and having a permanent home. What's the latest on that?
We're still actively fundraising. I think we'll be fundraising for the rest of my life in PURA's existence. But I do want to say Catherine Ott-Level, Aparna, Bob Allen, and Councilman Curtis Jones, they have been a huge saving grace for Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy. We do have a new location. It's in the Cobbs Creek section. It once was a bocce court, which we are converting into a stable. So we're in the architectural phases right now. So as soon as we can get these designs, the architect gets these designs done, we can submit them to Parks and Rec, hopefully within the next few weeks, mm-hmm. and we can break ground.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yes.
What time frame are you guys aiming for? And you said you think you'll be fundraising for the rest of your life, but honestly, what's the goal and how much have you raised so far?
Through the GoFundMe, we only raised, I want to say, $125,000. We need about $800,000 for this entire project. But when I say fundraising for our entire life, it's a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. It's a nonprofit for profit, but to keep all of the horses fed and to pay the staff that are with these kids, we're going to have to fundraise. And we are starting off small when we do come to this new location, but we do have plans on expanding the facility as the program grows. But there's like a desperate need for this kind of recreation now. And with the city knowing the lack of recreation, I think they would help this process or can help this process.
Yeah, and it's definitely needed. It is definitely needed. What is something, Erin, that you would want the community in Philadelphia to know about the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy? What's the one message that you want everyone to know?
The one message that I want everyone to know is, we are living in some crazy times between this pandemic and the gun violence. Know that everyone on PURA's team and staff were a product of our environment. And we also are a product of the urban Black cowboy. So if we can make it, we all can make it. And, we'll hopefully be back to Cobbs Creek in 2022 and know that, we can make a change within our community.
Erin Brown, Executive Director of PURA, which is Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy. I'm sure there'll be more films made about the Riding Academy and the Fletcher Street stables. I'm sure because people really seem to be gravitating toward these movies that feature something we just don't get to see too often. But Erin, thank you so much for your time. Much success and good luck to the fundraising effort for the organization. And like I said, continued success to you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you.